Bible study, Experiencing God Before, and there's a principle in there that says to take a look at where God is working and then jump on board. And God has been doing some amazing things in the country of Haiti in this church. It began with Sarah and Breland Lean going there after the earthquake and just having a passion for what God's doing there. And that passion has just exploded in a number of different ways. And we're going to let you hear a story about God's care for the orphans that we just sung about through the Haroldsons and the Pearcys.
Good morning. My name is Doreen Haroldson, and this is my husband, David, and we want to introduce you to Stanley. We are in the process of adopting Stanley from Haiti. We're about 5 months in, and they tell us it can take anywhere from 12 to 18 months. We have 2 daughters, Megan, who's 17 years old, and Anna, who's 15. God put Stanley on our hearts in May. The girls came home from a Wednesday night Bible study and said, "Mom, you have to see Stanley. He is so cute. We should adopt him." And they were so excited to show us pictures. And so we looked over the website, and their Bible study leader, one of their leaders, her name is Sarah Lean, and she's been working with a school and an orphanage in Haiti. And so we looked at all the kids that need sponsorship through the school, and then the 5 boys that lived in the orphanage. So that night after they went to bed, I read every story on the website, and my heart was definitely drawn to Stanley as well. He turned 7 years old in April, and he's been in an orphanage since he was 4. The days following, I couldn't stop thinking about this little guy. I'd wake up, and he was the first thing on my mind. All throughout the day, whenever we would do things as a family, I would kind of look around and I could almost see Stanley standing there with us. One day, the girls came home after school, and they laid on our bed with us, and they're telling me about their day. And first thing was, well, where is Stanley going to lay? And can we all fit on this queen bed together? But today, the best part of our adoption journey I want to share with you is how God spoke to me on June 19th. To give you some background, for me, when I'm trying to make a decision, I collect the facts, pray about it, think about it a little, and decide. David works a little bit differently, and he, of course, gave me permission to say this, but he thinks about it, prays about it, talks about it, thinks about it, processes it, thinks about it, talks some more about it. I think you kind of get the idea. So I knew this was a huge decision for us, and that we needed to be equally committed to God's calling, and that I needed to give God time, or God needed to help me give David time. So I prayed, and I said, okay, God, you're going to need to help me a lot to not want to bring this up every minute of every day and talk about it, and instead wait and give David time to think about it. So along the way, I created a blog of our journey, and I want to read to you today the entry on June 19th. This morning, I woke up with a song in my head, and I wasn't sure when or where I'd heard it before. I asked my daughter, Anna, do you know that song that goes, "Waiting, I'm waiting on you, Lord, for I am hopeful, I am waiting on you, Lord, for I am peaceful, I am waiting on you, Lord. I will serve you while I'm waiting, I will worship you while I'm waiting." Well, Anna recognized the song, but we just couldn't really place that morning where we had heard it. So as I was driving to work, I was humming the tune, and I said, "Was that you, God? Are you trying to talk to me? Is that the message that you're giving me?" Well, if that wasn't clear enough, then I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if I heard that song on the radio on my way to work? I guess I wanted God to hit me over the head with his message. God, I'm sorry I didn't have enough faith to hear that the first time. And then I talked to myself, and I said, I can't just ask God to play a song in KTIS right now, just for me. So I didn't hear the song on the way to work, and so I went into the office. I worked for about 45 minutes, and then I needed to go to a meeting that was in another building. And so I left, and as I got in the car, I turned on the radio, and the first words I heard were, "Waiting, I'm waiting on you, Lord." It was the song. I sang, cried, sang, and cried as I heard the song playing on the radio. This was the exact song that God had put on my heart this morning. Thank you, Lord. I will wait on you, Lord. I don't know what the answer is going to be, but I know that we will follow your plan. I couldn't believe that God would speak to me like that, and it really was one of the most amazing moments in my life. After that, I had a lot of good days hanging on to this during that waiting period, but I also had a lot of tough days where I wasn't quite sure if the answer was no, how my heart would deal with that. So daily, hourly, I talked to God about it, and I just know that He carried me through that time.
Well, it has been quite a journey, and Doreen pretty well explained how I process things, and she's right, I do take time, and I knew that it was going to take a little bit for me to kind of wrestle with this one and decide, are we really up for the task, up for the challenge? And I knew she was into it because one day I come home and she'd already connected with Sarah's sister who has adopted a couple of boys from Haiti, and so a few days later it was, I talked to Rock, who's the in charge of the orphanage down in Haiti, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, she's going on. Next couple days later it was, I've talked to Washington, D.C., and we've got to do this, that, and the other thing, and so I thought, okay, here we go. So for me personally, it was a real journey because I'm thinking, okay, am I too old to do this? My sister and her husband are the same age as we are. They've got the same age boys that we do, so I kind of wrestled with that one and thought, okay, they can do it, we can do it. Yep, okay, so much for that excuse. We're empty nesters in a couple of years. I'm kind of envisioning us riding off into the sunset on our motorcycles and enjoying the next phase of our life, and I thought to myself, well, Stanley likes motorcycles, and there's no reason why he couldn't ride on the back with me, so there I am. Ultimately, it came down to me being very selfish about my time and what's my life going to be like, and I got over it. I had to say to myself, you know what? We got an awesome church. I've got an awesome family, and just there's a lot of opportunity for us to make a huge difference in this little guy's life. So there we are. It took me a month longer than Doreen. Well, that was in June, and it was July when I dropped the bomb on her that I was ready to do it and throw my hat over the fence, and so here we are. So who'd ever thunk I'd be standing up in front of the church telling this story 6 months ago? Oh, golly. Anyway, so we have decided to adopt Stanley, and we feel so blessed, and quite honestly, we're scared to death that God has picked us to be Stanley's parents. We are so excited to start this new journey. However, we know there's going to be many new challenges, and we're going to face these challenges, things that we've never even thought about up to now as parents. And so we do have a few prayers to share with you. First off, the challenge of being a multiracial family. And actually, Stanley doesn't even know what it's like to be a part of a family. Stanley's grief and loss of everything as he moves to Minnesota, such as his caretakers, food, climate, birth country, his 2 p.m. bath time, grief for him over the things that he doesn't even know, such as why was he given up? What were his mom and dad like? Where was his home? How old was he when he took his first steps? All these kinds of things. Pray for us as we think about attachment and bonding issues. Everything we've read so far on this topic is that this process can take a long time. Learning a new language is a biggie for us. Stanley speaks Haitian Creole and French. We don't. So it's going to be an interesting journey there. And lastly, having a boy. We're excited to have a son, and we hear from our friends and family who have boys that's a little different than raising girls, and so that's going to be an adjustment for us as well. So. In all our decisions of should we adopt Stanley, it would always come around to all of our fears and questions. Well, what about this, and how are we going to deal with that? And in the end, we just kept coming back to, but God is putting Stanley on our hearts for a reason. How can we not step out in faith and just say, yes, let's do it? We have a plaque hanging in our house that says, faith makes things possible, not easy. This is a quote we will be living by for the next few years, and we appreciate all of your prayers. Stanley has a good friend in the orphanage, and his name is Devinsley, and the story continues with the Pearcys.
I love that picture of, seems like Stanley tormenting Devinsley. Stanley's got a lot of similar characteristics to the Haroldsons, I think. He loves to have fun and laugh and be silly and will be a great addition to their family. I'm Ann, and this is Scott, and we have a daughter, Callie, who's in 8th grade, and Will, up here in the front, he's 11 and in 6th grade. I got to be there that day that Anna and Megan went home and shared their excitement and enthusiasm over Stanley, part of that Bible study with those girls, and so that was a fun night to be there, and I could just immediately sense their attraction to Stanley, and I envision what it was like when they got home and all the chatter around that, so that's fun to have that part of our story too. The topic of adoption's come up a handful of times in our marriage the last 15 years. It would go something like this. Scott would say, yeah, I'd be open to adopting. And I would say, yeah, not me. And it would just, we'd talk about that here and there, and he was always open to it, and I just never really was. He has the gift of helping others, as many of you in this church have probably been the recipient of his help. He loves to help people. He never pushed me, though, towards adopting. He just let that be known that he would, and I appreciate that he did not ever pressure me in that way. Part of our story is that we have a lot of family and friends who have adopted internationally. My little brother adopted a little boy from Guatemala 5 years ago, and we have many good friends who have adopted. So we've been around that scenario quite often with friends. 2 years ago, some friends of ours approached us and actually asked us if we'd be interested in adopting with them from Ethiopia. We prayed about it for a couple weeks and just didn't feel the Lord leading us at that time to walk down that road. And I was really relieved. Like, oh, thank you for not calling us to do that right now. But it's because he was getting us ready for this season, and it's really exciting. This past spring, sometime in April, I was having a quiet time with the Lord. I was just asking him what might be next for our family. I was just feeling like, gosh, things are going really well, and we're kind of in a groove with our marriage, with our kids. Things are going well, and just felt like maybe the Lord was preparing us for something down the road, and I was willing and ready to say okay, except for it like being to Africa with the Gilmores. I did not want it to be there. So I'm relieved that it's not, I don't think, for now. So I just kind of let that go. We got into a busy season in the spring with baseball and hockey and didn't really think much about that. But it was a day I remember well, telling him, whatever you have for us, I think I can do it. Then the day came at the end of July when Doreen pulled me aside here at church and said, I got to tell you some news, something really exciting. And I quickly went through my thoughts of, I don't think she'd be this excited if she was pregnant. And I don't think she'd be this excited if they were moving away from Minnesota because she has family in Colorado. So I couldn't imagine what it was. And she said, we're going to adopt Stanley. And I was just like, you got to be kidding me. No way. Like, I knew who Stanley was, and just through our story with Sarah, Aline, and the kids, and I just couldn't believe it. And after the service, I said to Sarah, so who's left? I knew there was 5 kids in the orphanage. I knew that many of them, and maybe all now with Stanley, were in the process of being adopted. And I said, is anybody left? And she said, well, just one little dude, DeVinsley. And I just blurted out, well, maybe we'll have to adopt him. I just couldn't handle the thought of leaving him there. And then I just went through what am I talking about? Did I really say that? Just ignore that. And God just didn't let that go. And we spent the month of August praying about it and talking about it. And I look at Will because I didn't do this the first service. But our kids were so on fire and so excited about it. One quick story that he's going to kill me for sharing later. Sorry. He one night said, well, Mom, if we had to go to the store and get some milk, and he came with me, and on the way there, he said, Mom, if we do adopt DeVinsley, how long would it be before I would get to see my friends again? And I said, I don't know, probably like a couple days, just till, we could all be together for a few days, and he'd get to really know us as a family. And he's like, okay. And we went into the store, came back out. On the way home, he goes, Mom, I kind of thought maybe it was going to be like a year before I could see my friends. But he was okay with that. Like, he was going to accept that. And that was the coolest part of the whole story, that he was going to be willing to accept that piece, whatever it was. So they were just on board. During the month, I felt like just distinct audible words from the Lord of encouragement. One was when I was asking him, why now? Why now are you calling me or us to adopt? And I felt like he said, for such a time as this. And I knew that was in Esther. I knew that's the part of her story in the Bible, but I didn't know exactly where. And I spent 3 different times that week looking for it. Couldn't find it. And we got to family camp the next week and was walking on the first day, and they have a billboard there that puts their theme for the summer for camp, and it said Esther 4:14, for such a time as this. And so that was a cool word for me, just the Lord showing me, since you couldn't find it yourself, here it is. And then another one, I went for a walk, and I just left my iPod at home, and I was just asking the Lord and going through all these scenarios and many of what David shared in our prayer requests, which are very similar. And how are we going to really do this? I mean, come on. And he gave me this memory that I hadn't thought about since it happened. Something I did back after college with some friends. We went to Hawaii, and we rented a house on 80 acres of land that we were allowed to go explore. And so we were hiking one day, and in the middle of these woods, and we came across this just beautiful pool of water with a huge cliff above it. And we looked at it, and 2 of us out of 6 thought it looked climbable and jumpable. I was one of the 2. The other ones were not up for it. So the 2 of us that were, we started climbing, and it was really scary, and it was really steep and really dangerous. And we just kept going, and we were telling each other, don't look down, keep going, we're here for each other. And we get to the top, and we're like, well, what are we going to do now? Well, we're going to have to jump, even though it was really far and scary. And we didn't know how deep the pool of water was. I know my mom's out there going, you idiot. And I told Callie in the last service, don't ever try this yourselves. So we stood there for 10 minutes, honestly, and just like, this is crazy. This is so stupid. We don't even know how deep that is. We're going to die. At least we'll be together. What are you doing? So we held hands, counted to 3, jumped as far as we could so we could hit the deepest part of whatever the depth was of this pool. And we screamed the whole way down, and it was so awesome. And it was incredible. And we got to feel the exhilaration of that jump that our friends didn't, that were on the ground, but they were cheering us on, and we needed them to cheer us on. We couldn't have done it without their encouragement. You guys are kind of like the encouragement. We're the jumpers. And God told me, it's going to be a little bit like that. It's going to be really scary at times. Don't look down. Keep your eyes up. Keep your eyes on us, and it's going to be worth it in the end. And it was a really cool memory that he gave me that day. So that's part of our story. I'll just let Scott go now. Oh, no, I do have one other thing. Sorry. This is a part I ad-libbed earlier, so I'll share it with you. But I started to think this week, like, why do I like to do stuff like this with friends and with people? And I think it's because I'm a twin. I have a twin sister. And I always had a buddy with me for everything, like the first day of school, and we went to college together, and we didn't live together all the time, but I always had somebody there. I don't know how you singleton people get through life, like having to do so much by yourselves. So I just am really blessed and don't think I could have even done this without these guys and without this church body, so thanks.
You would have never known she was nervous to be up here and speak. The song that we sang, what joy it is, and the line that we sang about, my confidence is in the Lord, and that's truly what we feel through this process. It's not easy. It's I've shared that Ann called me. I think this was on a Sunday, and we had driven separately for some reason, and she called me. She goes, I better tell you about what I told Sarah Lean, or something I just told Sarah Lean. She wanted to share right away in case Sarah happened to call me and share it or something. But while she's right that I'd always said I was certainly open to adoption of that idea, I didn't know what that ever looked like or ever thought it would come to place. But it's one thing to be open to something, and it's another to walk down that path, as you've probably experienced in areas of your life. And so it's been kind of a process of obedience from that regards. I definitely tend to be more of a person who jumps on board with ideas and says yes to things, and it's the helping gift, I think, is part of that. But I really wanted to be intentional about this process, so we did take time. And while I love that the Haroldsons were just kind of quiet and talking amongst themselves and praying on their own, I just felt this need to talk and to share, and we have the opportunity to go to family camp and some dear friends that we could communicate with and talk to, and it was a very open process. And all along I knew that this was going to happen. In my heart I knew, I just had a peace, I had that confidence that the song talks about, that we would eventually adopt DeVinsley. And so as we walk through that process, it's been an amazing thing for us, and it's going to continue to be amazing. And as been shared, we're not sure where it's going to go. We covet your prayers. We're excited for the opportunity. We're excited to share this journey with our church family, with our friends. It is a big deal to have you guys as part of that, as our family, and having our kids on board. And we just ask that you would join us in that prayer for the boys, and prayer for Pastor Brian and Darren get to go down there in about a month and meet them for the first time. And one last thing, I'll just finish with this. One of the cool confirmations, and you've heard some stories about how God works. One of the things that when Ann responded to Sarah that day, it was out of this desire to not hear that there's one boy at this orphanage that would be left behind, so to speak, or not being adopted. And I think it was a week or 2 weeks ago, the director of the orphanage, his name is Everest, and he was going to be leaving for a short period of time, came back to the States to work on his, I think it's his master's program, and was going to be leaving for a few months. So he was saying goodbye to the boys, and in fact, he was literally saying goodbye to 2 or 3 of them. He thought they would probably be gone because they were being adopted. And one of the first things apparently that DeVinsley said to him was, "Does that mean I'm going to be all alone?" And Everest was able to share with him, "No, you're never going to be alone. Stanley will always be with you." So we were able to walk down that with him, and you'll always have him as a friend, and he'll always be there. And that was DeVinsley's concern, and that was Ann's first thought when that was shared with him. So it was this cool confirmation, again, just the way the Lord works and why we're here to do that. So up on the screen, if you're interested in writing those down, there's 2 blogs that are both done by David and I say our lovely wives. I don't have anything to do with ours, but I love reading it. So if you want to follow that journey, there's a couple blogs there for you to follow along. And we really do covet your prayers, and thanks for just the support that you guys give to us as our church family. So thank you.